last week we did Romans 9. Today we're at Romans 10. All right, let's get to work. Brothers and sisters, of course, this is Paul still talking to the Romans, and he's still talking about Israel a lot, and you'll get that from this verse. He says, my heart's desire and prayer to God for them, talking about Israel, is that they could be saved. That's what I want. These are my people. I want you to work for them. I can testify that they have a zeal for God. That's a good thing. These people love God. There's a problem, though. They love God, but it is not an enlightened love. They need more light. Because for being ignorant of the righteousness that comes from God, and they've been seeking to establish their own. Because they're not following God's righteousness and they're doing their own, they haven't submitted to God's righteousness. God has a way of doing things, and when they choose not to go that way, they can't do what God is asking them to do. Does that make sense? Yes. For Christ is the what? Christ is the end of the law. And I actually like that because that's the way I memorized it, Miss Nancy. But this in the NRSV says it a little bit different. And I kind of like, Christ is the end of the law, so that there can be righteousness for everybody that believes. If you're a follower of the law, that's where your righteousness comes from. And you know what that means? If you can't partake of the law, you can't be righteous. That walls us out, because I'm not a Jew, and I don't think y'all are either. I got nothing to do with the law, except that it keeps me on the outside. But Christ is the end of the law, so that I can come, so that you can come. The law is not going to make us righteous. And honestly, it didn't for them either, because they couldn't measure up. At least that's what Paul's been telling us, right? Y'all with me? Nod your head, do something, let me know you're alive. You know, Moses writes concerning the righteousness that comes from the law. All right, this is what Moses says. The person who does these things will live by them. The law is going to cause you to live if you keep it. But the righteousness that comes from faith doesn't say that. The righteousness that comes from faith says, don't say in your heart, who's going to ascend into heaven? That is to bring Christ down. Or who will descend into the abyss? That is to bring Christ up from the dead. The righteousness that comes from faith doesn't say who's going to do these things. It doesn't. They've already been done. No, what does the righteousness that comes from faith say? It says, this word that you've heard, it's near to you. It's on your lips and it's in your heart. It's a part of you. That is the word of faith that we get to proclaim. Am I going too fast? I feel like I'm flying. Because, and I love this, look how simple this one statement is. Because if you confess with your lips that Jesus is Lord, and you believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved. It's not more complicated than that. I love coming to church here, but I don't have to confess that Mount Zion Free Will Baptist Church is awesome. I mean, I love it, and I pray that God's blessing is on it, but that is not what's going to get me right with God. I have two things I got to do. I got to confess with my mouth Jesus is Lord. And wholeheartedly, 100%, that's what I do. And I believe in my heart that God has raised him from the dead. You know what? That makes me acceptable. Because, you know what? One, a person believes with the heart. That's where your trust is coming from. And that person is justified because they really do trust. And one confesses with the mouth. That what's on the inside, you know, it says in one place, out of the treasures of your heart, The mouth speaks. What is filling you up on the inside is going to find its way out. If you're filled with hatred, you know what comes out of your mouth? It's hatred. If you're just an ornery, nasty cuss, that comes out of your mouth too. But you know what? If you trust God, that's what's coming out of your mouth. And so one confesses with the mouth, and they're saved. The Scripture says that nobody that believes in Him is going to be put to shame. You know what would put somebody to shame? It's in trusting in somebody they shouldn't trust in. You know, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, I don't care. They were our presidents. They get respect just for having that office. I don't put my trust in them. Because you know what? Joe Biden, Donald Trump, I don't care who it is, they're not faithful. They're not consistent, at least not at the level that God is. God will never fail me. And for that reason, if I put my trust in Him, I will never have a reason to feel shame. Because you know what? No, now there is no distinction between Jew and Greek. Doesn't matter anymore. The same Lord is Lord of all, both Jew and Greek. Jesus is it. And He is generous to all who call on Him. He doesn't have favorites. He doesn't. He does not. The homeless man on the street, the rich man driving his Lexus, don't care. Same price was paid for both. He loves them equal. Now, sometimes there's a difference. You might have 10 children. I pray to God for you if you have 10 children. You might be closer to some than others. That happens. You know. Don and Joy, of course, y'all know they live with us. All right? They have a daughter, Sharon, that lives in Nebraska. I imagine Jean and Carol Ann are closer to them. Doesn't have anything to do with their love, but there is a matter of closeness. And there are rewards for being close to God. You just can't, they rub off on you. The more time you spend with it, the more you know Him, the more you're going to trust, the more you're going to look like Him, the more you're going to act like Him. It's not a matter of love, but there are benefits for being close. That wasn't in there. I was just throwing that in for free. Y'all don't even have to pay me for it. The same Lord is Lord of all. And He's generous to all that call on Him. Because everybody who calls on the name of the Lord is going to be saved. But how are they going to call? All right, so let me apologize. All right, when I was doing this mess yesterday, was it yesterday? It was yesterday. My mouse was off like one letter, and so that's why you see me cutting through the middle of words. I apologize for that. Because how are they to call on one in whom they have not believed? How are you going to call on somebody you don't know that you can trust? All right, Brother Raymond, I'm going to use you for an example. You're driving down the road and you get a flat tire and you need some help. Are you going to call a stranger and ask them to come and help you? Probably not. Yeah. You're going to call somebody you know, right? Same idea. How are you going to call on somebody you haven't trusted in? That makes no sense. It doesn't make any sense to us. All right? And how are you going to trust in somebody that you've never heard? Well, you know, I trust Leroy outside, but I've never talked to him before. Really? No. You trust the ones you know, that you're close to. You've seen how they act. And how are you going to hear that person? Unless somebody has proclaimed them, unless you've been introduced. Well, you're not. I mean, you might just wander up to them in Dollar General or something, but in general, somebody introduces you. Well, you can even say the Dollar General introduced you. We went to the same place and we met. But, of course, y'all know we're talking about God. You know, how is somebody going to know to trust in God unless somebody tells them about. I mean, if nobody had ever seen God, it's obvious somebody made all this stuff, but what do I know about them just by looking? Not a whole lot. I need somebody. That was me. I hit the thing. Sorry. Somebody's got to proclaim him before I can hear him. And I've got to hear him before I can trust him. And I've got to trust him before I can call on him. And how is somebody going to proclaim this God unless they're sent? Right, Miss Nancy, how are you going to tell somebody about God unless he says, go and tell them about me? That's why it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring the good news. Or that's who we are, or at least who we're supposed to be. But you know what? Not all have obeyed the good news. Sad, but true. For Isaiah says, Lord, who has believed our message? So it comes, and that's what he's saying. Faith comes from what is heard. And what is heard comes through the word of Christ. And I don't know if that's saying the word about Christ or the word that Christ is leading us into. Probably both, if we're being honest. But that faith comes from hearing his word. And it should increase. That's what we were talking about before. If the words that are coming out of my mouth are not causing your faith to increase, we need somebody new up here. All right? Just being honest. Because y'all need to grow as much as I do. I need more faith. I'll testify to that right now. Y'all don't have to. I need more. But I ask, Paul says, haven't they heard? Indeed, they have. Paul says they have heard. Because the voice has gone out to all the earth, and the words to the end of the world. This message has gone out. Again, I ask, didn't Israel understand? Because he's still on that whole topic about, I wish to God that Israel would be saved. Didn't Israel understand what it heard? First, Moses says, you know what? I'm going to make you jealous of those people that are not a nation. Excuse me. With a foolish nation, I'm going to make you angry. Then Isaiah is so bold that he says this, I have been found by those that did not seek me. That would be the Gentiles. That'd be us. I didn't go out looking for them. Did y'all go out looking for them? But we found him. I have been found by those that did not seek me. I have shown myself to those that weren't asking. But of Israel, this is what he says. All day long I have held out my hands to a disobedient and a contrary people. I have worked with y'all. Y'all know what it's like. Y'all ever have a kid that just won't listen to you? That wants to go their own way and do their own thing and won't learn from your mistakes? Won't listen to good advice? That's what God is dealing with here. All day long I have held out my hands to help you, and you won't take it. I ain't stupid. I know what I'm talking about. Listen to me. And this is what God has been dealing with. All right, that's the end of Romans 10. How much time we got left? We going on. Because honestly, that is a really bad place to end a chapter. So, I got Romans 11 already. So Paul continues, I ask then, has God rejected his people? He promised to his people. He made promises. So has he neglected that? Has he turned away? By no means. I myself, talking about Paul, am an Israelite. I'm a descendant of Abraham, and I'm a member of the tribe of Benjamin. And he's like, I've got this. I have laid hold. God hasn't forgotten all of Israel because He's brought me here. God has not rejected His people, the ones He foreknew. He knew ahead of time that there were going to be people that would trust. Don't you know what the Scripture says of Elijah? How he pleads with God against Israel? This is actually kind of a cool way to put it. Elijah was fed up with Israel, dealing with Ahab and Jezebel and all that mess they were in, and the false prophets, Baal, and I think it's Asheroth, but I'm not sure. But Elijah's just fed up with them, and he pleads with God against Israel. Lord, they have killed your prophets. They have demolished your altars. This is what Israel has done. Sick 'em is kind of what he's saying. I alone, I am left by myself. And they, you know what? They are being really kind to me right now. No, they are seeking my life. Elijah is fed up. And I probably would be too. But what is the divine reply to him? What does God say? He says, you know, Elijah, I have kept for myself 7,000 that have not bowed their knee to Baal. Yeah, Israel has messed up and they have gone off, but not all of them. I still have a people. So too at the present time. Of course, this is Paul talking about his present time, but I imagine the same is true today. So too at the present time, there is a remnant that is chosen by grace. Thing is, though, if it is grace, then it's not based on the works of the law, because grace is a gift. Otherwise, grace would not be grace. If you can earn it, it's not grace. All right, just plain and simple. What then? Israel failed to obtain what it was seeking? No, but the elect obtained it. The ones that trusted, the ones that were doing the law, but they were fulfilling the law because they trusted. Because there is a difference. It's always been that trust that God was hoping for. Even when he had the law, he was hoping for faith. When he looked at David, what did he say about David? He said, there is a man after my own heart. He didn't say, there's a man who keeps the law. How many times did God say that about somebody? Enoch, he said, he walked with God. Abraham was the friend of God. How many times did he compliment somebody by saying they kept the law good?
You might come comparisons to probably Job.
Yeah. Yeah. Job had a rough life. And some of those conversations, I have read Job, and sometimes, God forbid me, sometimes I felt like the people that were advising him just go on and give up and die. I'm not saying that was the right way to think, but he persevered. He made it. Yeah. But he did. He trusted God. Even when it all went south is a good way of putting it. He lost his family. He lost his kids. He lost everything. And he trusted. I don't know. It would have been hard for me to have that kind of trust. Yeah. Yep. It says the elect obtained it. But you know what? The rest were hardened. All right, and I didn't always understand that, and I don't know that I still understand this the way I should. But this hardening of somebody's heart, I don't think that's just something that God does all willy-nilly. But somebody that consistently rejects, at some point he's like, all right, that's enough. And he will harden their heart. He's like, all right, if you don't want it, you choose this, all right, we're going to stick with that. Like he did with Pharaoh and stuff. The elect obtained it, but the rest were hardened. As it is written, God gave them a sluggish spirit, eyes that would not see, and ears that just would not hear. And that has continued down to this very day. And David says, you know what? Let their table become a snare and a trap. Let it be a stumbling block for them and a retribution for them. Let their eyes be darkened so they cannot see. And keep their backs forever bent. The people that reject what God would have, let them have what they've asked for. And let them have the consequences of what, because they've asked for something that's not good. And so, yeah, let their eyes be darkened. And keep their backs bent forever. You know what the bent backs is? If I'm not mistaken, that's because you're hunched over having to work hard. At least that would be my guess. So I ask, has Israel stumbled so as to fall? No, by no means. But through their stumbling, salvation has come to the Gentiles. We had an opportunity because that people rejected God. The rejection was not a good thing. But God used it as an opportunity to work for us. Through their stumbling, salvation has come to the Gentiles. Why? Well, partly to make Israel jealous. Do what? These Gentiles have the blessings of God. They weren't meant for them. That's supposed to be us. We're supposed to be the ones that trust God. It should make them jealous. Now, if their stumbling meant riches for the world, and if their defeat meant riches for Gentiles, then how much more will their full inclusion mean? If them not believing was good for us, how much more do you think them being a part of this would be good for all of us? Now I'm speaking to you Gentiles. In so much that I'm an apostle. Paul says, y'all are my bread and butter. Y'all are the ones God sent me to. So I'm talking to you. And I'm going to glorify my ministry. And I do that in order to make my own people jealous. You know, I'll talk about the grace of God that is given to us. So that Israel can see God really does take care of his people. And they will want to come back. And thus some of them will be saved. For if their rejection is the reconciliation of the rest of the world, then what will their acceptance be but life from the dead? If the part of the dough offered as first fruits is holy, then you know what? The whole batch is holy. And if the root is holy, then the branches are holy. But you know what? If some of the branches were broken off, and you, still talking to the Gentiles, you were a wild olive shoot, and y'all were grafted in their place, and you were grafted so that you could share that rich root of the olive tree, then do not boast over the branches. All right, y'all don't get a high mind. God took out some of his own people to put me in there. He must really think I'm something great. Had better not be your attitude. If you do boast, then you need to remember this. It's not you that is supporting the root. It's the other way around. It's the root that is supporting you. You will say, you know, branches were broken off so that I could be grafted in. Well, that is true. You're not lying. They were broken off. Why? Because of their unbelief. They did not trust. All right? But the only reason you stand is because you're trusting. So don't be proud. You need to stand in awe. Because if God didn't spare the natural branches, the ones that were broken off for unbelief, He might not spare you. Thank you, Smushy. Note then the kindness and the severity of God. Because there's both. Severity toward those who have fallen, the ones that have chosen not to trust. But God's kindness toward you, the ones that have. Provided that you do what? That you made a proclamation of faith one day? Not what it says. Yeah. And not just His, but that you continue in His kindness. If you give up on God, He might just let you. And that is not a safe place to be. You need to continue in His kindness. Continue in His grace. Otherwise, you also will be cut off. Don't think it can't happen, because it can. And even those of Israel, as if they do not persist in unbelief, they'll be grafted in. God's not going to abandon them. He's going to keep His promise. But the promise is actually based on faith. Israel, that remnant, is only going to be grafted back in if they are a people of faith. For God has the power to graft them in again. For if you have been cut from what is by nature a wild olive tree and grafted, contrary to nature, into a cultivated... So the wild is taken and put into the domesticated thing, the cultivated olive tree. How much more will these natural... all right, so y'all know about transplants, lungs and stuff like that. It works a whole lot better if you take, a vein from your leg and put it in your heart than to get it from somebody else's body, right? Right? Same thing. He's saying if the branches that came off this tree were brought back in, that's going to be accepted a whole lot better than the wild ones that come from another tree that are grafted in. So how much more will these natural branches be grafted back into their own olive tree? So that you may not claim to be wiser than you are. Brothers and sisters, I want you to understand this mystery. A hardening has come upon part of Israel. I wonder how much time we've got. About 5 minutes, right? A hardening has come upon part of Israel until the full number of the Gentiles has come in. And so all of Israel will be saved. As it is written, out of Zion will come the deliverer, and He will banish ungodliness from Jacob. And this is my covenant, this is my promise to them when I take away their sins. As regards the gospel, Israel is the enemies of God for your sake. But as regards election, they are still beloved by God for the sake of their ancestors. God made a promise and He's going to keep it. For the gifts and the callings of God are irrevocable. God does not give up. Now He does let you choose, but on His part, He does not give up. So just as you were once disobedient to God, but have now received mercy because of their disobedience, so they have now been disobedient in order that by the mercy shown to you, they too may now receive mercy. For God has imprisoned all in disobedience, so that He can be merciful to all. Oh, the depth of the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments and how inscrutable his ways. For who has known the mind of the Lord? Or who has been God's counselor? Who has given gifts to him? So that God, I gave you something, God, give me something back. No, that's not what we're doing. For from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be the glory forever. Amen. God has done this marvelous work. He let Israel fall away so he could bring us in. And you know what? He's going to be the fact that we come in to help bring Israel back. That's smarter than me. All right, that's time. I put an alarm on my watch so I knew when it was 10:15. Any questions, comments? I know there's stuff I forgot and more that I should have said. But did this make sense? All right.
The Bible says blindness in part was for our sake.
Oh, it absolutely was. I love that part. I was found by a people that did not look for me. Yeah.
But as many as received him, to them
He gave the power to be the sons of God.
even to them that believe on his name.
Yeah.
If the Jews had accepted him, I don't know if we would have gotten that.
I don't know. I like to, because I understand the question, and I, as loving as God is, I think he would have found a way.
I do too. I really do.
Because I don't think he was just going to abandon. I don't think. I mean, you had the false gods and all that mess out there. I think God, he's just so smart, so powerful, and so wise. He knows what everybody is doing, even if they're not his people. And I don't think that he has abandoned. It's just, like we said, some kids are closer than other kids. Israel should have been the ones that were closest to him. But I mean, look, here you have all this stuff going on. He heard the prayers of Cornelius, who was a Gentile. And he's like, your alms and your prayers have come up as a memorial before God. God can't help but to see them. And that's why he sent Peter and the rest of them. And God told me, he said, send for Peter, who's staying at, some tanner's house in Joppa. And come and tell us all the things that God wants us to know. God would have found a way.
Yeah, I think that too.
Yeah. All right, we're going to pray. We're going to be dismissed. Thank y'all for putting up with me.
Hey everybody, it's Tony again. Let me ask you a question. Do you have questions that you would like answered? Do you want advice on spiritual things? Because I want to help. I really would. I'd like to help you if I can. Now, let me be honest. I can't promise that I can solve every problem you have, or that I can meet your every need, because that's not going to happen. I can't. And if I told you I could, it would be a lie. But I'm not going to lie to you. What I can promise is that if you ask me for something, then I'm going to at least pray about it for you. And, I'll try and help if I can, but, if I can. If you would like my prayers or my advice or to talk about scriptural things or anything like that, what I want you to do is to text me or email me at hegavemeastory@gmail.com. No spaces, no nothing, just all one word. hegavemeastory@gmail.com. Now, there are some specific instructions to make sure I get it. So, what I need you to do to make sure and put help shared faith either in the subject line or in the body of the text. Shared Faith is just the name of my Facebook page. And it's the filter that is going to send that email straight to me. Because if you don't put Help Shared Faith in there, there's a good possibility I won't get it for weeks or months, if ever. And I don't want that to happen. So please make sure you put Help Shared Faith either in the subject or the body of the text. And that's all I really have to say about that. I do want to say thank you for coming, for listening to the things I have to say, and for giving me the opportunity to present what I think God wanted me to talk about. I know that sounds a little presumptuous, but I really feel like He leads me in these things. And I just wanted to share. So thank you for coming. And I pray that God really does bless you and your life, and that He works to build you up and to make things better, to fill you with love and joy and happiness and all these wonderful things. I love you. God bless you. And hopefully we'll talk again soon. Thank you very much.